Our guest today is attorney Eric Sloan of Chiumento Law. Eric has built his career working with healthcare providers, businesses, and professionals on compliance, litigation, and corporate matters. With deep experience in healthcare regulations, privacy, and dispute resolution, he brings a well-rounded perspective on the legal challenges organizations face today. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, David.
Glad to have you. We're going to lean on your experience and talk about compliance programs for healthcare providers. And I promise this is very interesting stuff, so nobody change the channel. This is very good. I've learned a lot just reviewing and preparing to talk with you. What are some of the core elements that a healthcare provider should have in their compliance programs to make sure that they are serving that patient properly and legally?
So obviously we got data security and privacy issues. You want to make sure you have good vendor management. You want to, don't look at the contracts on your own. Hire a professional to look at the contracts for you. They'll point out the pitfalls if there are any. Patient records, training, make sure that your people are trained. I see a lot of times where they just show them a video. No, have somebody competent who can train and answer questions if need be. The big one that I see, healthcare and otherwise, human resources compliance. We misclassify employees. Maybe we want independent contractors and we don't want to do the payroll tax part. Well, then you may have an overtime problem.
Right.
And if you have an overtime problem, you've got a major problem.
All right. Well, that's a lot to unpack. So let me do this. Let me split it a little bit. I imagine that the world is very different for larger organizations like a hospital. Maybe it's a multi-location hospital versus that doctor practice. And maybe it's a solo or a team of doctors or a partnership. Let's focus a little bit more on that smaller, because I would imagine those big ones have a lot of things in place, although they still have some of their own challenges. So for that smaller provider that a lot of us interact with, right? The family doctor, that you're talking about vendor management, you're talking about HR, you're talking about classification of employees. Where do they start? There's a lot there. How do they get that going? How do they make sure that they're on track?
I think admit that you don't know what you don't know, and don't take the time to figure it out. You become a doctor or a healthcare provider to practice medicine, not to practice compliance. Don't be stubborn. Hire a professional. Buy a couple of hours of time. If you're fancy, have a business audit conducted. And in some cases, if you're going from small to medium, but the budget isn't there, some of us will do what we call fractional general counsel. For a set amount per month, you get dedicated hours per month for that. That way your office manager, you can call us, we can troubleshoot what's going on. And so that's helpful. But to ignore the compliance part, it's going to come back at some point, and it's going to be way more expensive.
So for the provider, they've got the actual provision of the care, provision of medicine, and they're going to have the support and the input from whatever experts and specialists and folks that do that. So they should have the same as it relates to their compliance programs and how they're doing what they're doing with the actual business of providing that care. And so one of the things is then, from a legal standpoint, having an attorney assist them.
100%. Yep.
Okay. All right. It's a lot to get your mind around because there's so many aspects to it. And I imagine that you have seen a lot of situations in your career where, providers are honestly trying to do good work for people, but they get tripped up on this whole area because it's just, as you said, not what they do.
Right. And it applies to lawyers too. So there was, in law school, we didn't take how to run a law practice. We kind of figure that out as we go. The benefit for lawyers, though, we self-regulate. So we don't have all the statutes and the compliance concerns that the state and federal government mandates on us. We have some, but not a lot. Doctors are different. But when it comes to my office, it's usually in the form of a problem. It's not, let me just be proactive.
So with kind of figuring this out for your typical provider of service, again, doctor, smaller hospital, whatever the case may be, talk a little bit about the advantages, disadvantages of their having in-house support legally or outside support, or maybe a combination.
Well, a lot of it's going to come down to budget, and people will resist the lawyer for as long as possible. Once you get a lawyer in-house, you'll never want to get rid of the lawyer, and that's a good thing because now you have somebody immersed in your business and dealing with the same troubles you are day in and day out. Us in private practice, we go from healthcare to barbershops to whatever. Ultimately, it's similar, but if you can dedicate resources full-time in-house, do it. Otherwise, just have something there. Just don't fly alone.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the old saying that we don't know what we don't know.
Correct.
And we may be making our best efforts to help people and provide the service that we've agreed to provide. But if we don't know something, it's going to come at us sideways. And as you would know from the work you've done, Eric, over the years, it's that very thing where we get attacked or we have a problem.
Yep.
Yeah. So how about the evolution of the American workforce? It's changed, right? Especially with COVID and the acceleration of remote. And so now that we're kind of, coming back post-COVID, we're seeing things kind of evolve. So where are we now in terms of the impact of this hybrid workforce, some in the office, some out of the office, some part-time in the office, some days out of the office? How is that impacting a provider's ability to have a sound compliance program?
Well, in that case, if you have a remote workforce or partially remote workforce, you need to have policies drafted around what does that look like? So if we're talking about a laptop, which I would never recommend, then we're talking about a desktop at home where they access the systems. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need to talk about the security at home. If it could be a company machine and we can just have that done and the IT department is in charge of that, then that's ideal. Otherwise, we need to make sure that the person working at home is following the policies and then double check, make sure. It's just a lot of times the policies are read this and sign it once a year, and then we hope nothing bad happens. No, you got to be in your compliance program. You need to be proactive.
You've pointed out a really interesting intersection, and that is in today's world, and again, specifically in the area of the workforce, you have an intersection between legal compliance aspects of the healthcare providers with how employees are working and technology. And so this is evolving. And so there's the elephant in the room, which is AI. And so are you finding that healthcare providers are now needing to address the augmentation and integration of AI from a compliance standpoint?
That scares me to think about that. I think for us, we don't even know what the limit is, even if there is one. The really good thing about COVID, if there is a good thing, is telemedicine. And so that as patients and providers, we can do the hybrid thing. We don't have to see you in the office. There's limitations, of course, because I can't see you in the office. Right. But there is so much technology around blood pressure and heart monitors and that sort of thing that you can do remotely. You still got the compliance aspect that comes with it. So you can't ever not get away from the compliance part, but everything that we're seeing, ultimately, it's better for the provider and it's going to be better for the patient. And it's going to be, you would assume, cheaper.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And we'll wrap on this point. Very often doctors, family practice, they have to chase their patients to go get that blood work, right? Well, doctor, take your own medicine. You need to step up and get your compliance program addressed if it hasn't been, and make sure you're in good hands. Eric Sloan, thank you, sir.
Thanks, David.